The Supreme Court laying the smackdown on rogue judges who think they know better than the 77 million Americans who voted for President Trump's agenda. The top court with a 6-3 decision that limits the use of nationwide injunctions. As you can see from this graphic, Trump is the MVP compared to other presidents when it comes to nationwide injunctions.
Wow.
47 taking a victory lap in the briefing room and listing all the things he's now free to implement.
This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades. We can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list.
But naturally, the liberal media and Democrats are melting down over the loss of their favorite tool to stop the Trump agenda.
This sounds like a giant win for the Trump administration and could likely trigger chaos now across the country.
There are two things that are resulting from this: chaos and confusion.
Reckless and unprecedented.
They have dealt a death blow to the rule of law.
Presidency is far more powerful than it was at 9:55 a.m. this morning.
And another key decision, the Supreme Court also ruling in favor of religious parents of different faith backgrounds who wanted to opt their children out of reading storybooks that go against their beliefs. President Trump hailing that as a major victory for parents.
It's a great ruling for parents. It's really a ruling for parents. They lost control of the schools. They lost control of their child. And this is a tremendous victory for parents. And I'm not surprised by it, but I am surprised that it went this far. It took us to bring life back to normal. So it's wonderful. It's parental. And I kept saying, we will give you back your parental rights. They were taken away, and this is a tremendous victory for parents.
Love it.
All right, Jesse, chaos breaking out everywhere, according to the left, because of these rulings.
The Trump resistance is officially dead. This was the only thing that was slowing this down. It's no doubt a major body blow. All they have left are riots. The lawfare failed. These injunction maniacs failed. Weaponization failed. You can't be the party of lawyers. That's all they are. They're the party of lawyers. They're just going to have to start persuading people and legislating, what they're supposed to be doing. And they also, when they lose cases like this, they lose the moral high ground because their entire message has been this: that Donald Trump's a tyrant and he's trampling on the Constitution and he's destroying everyone's rights and he's breaking the law. But it turns out when these rulings come down, it's the left that are breaking the law as they oppose Donald Trump. So this clears the way for all the goodies that Donald Trump just listed. I'm mostly enjoying Amy Coney Barrett just bench slap Justice Jackson. In their brilliantly academic way, they're all calling her a nitwit. And we knew she was a nitwit because she couldn't define what a woman was. But they're basically saying you're not, in your dissents, grounding any of your arguments in case law. You're just making stuff up. And every other justice agrees that this woman is just not qualified. And you look back at the Biden legacy, he gave us Kamala Harris and he gave us Justice Jackson. And you got to look and say, wow, what a bad move.
And Kennedy, not only are they just making things up and not basing it on case law, they're also being hypocritical because Elena Kagan, who's a justice who didn't like this ruling, 2 years ago said you can't have a single district court judge stopping the agenda of a duly elected president across the country.
Yeah, and I wish it were a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court. And I don't like seeing these decisions fall along ideological lines because oftentimes, and it was, I believe it was Associate Justice Sotomayor who pointed out, they should be really careful because when there is a leftist president, he will issue an executive order on guns. That's actually something that kind of terrifies me.
We're going to jump right back into the clip, guys, and trust me, you don't want to miss what they say next. But before we do, let's just pause for a second and recognize the magnitude of what just happened. This isn't just another court case. This is the Supreme Court stepping in and saying, you know what, guys, enough is enough. No more rogue judges in blue cities putting Trump's entire agenda in a chokehold. The left's playbook, guys, is falling apart, and now the door is open, wide open, for Trump to walk through with bold policy that the American people voted for. Guys, if you're glad to see the Constitution finally taking center stage again, hit that like button and subscribe. We need more voices standing up to the media spin, and that's exactly what we do here on this channel. All right, let's get back to the clip.
And I think they made a point about being very careful of executive orders trying to undo aspects of the Constitution when this president and other Republicans always run on originalism and adhering to the text of the Constitution as it was written, not as they interpret it now very subjectively. That's something that President Obama liked to do. That's something that Democrats are a little more fond of. And I think conservatives have to be very, very careful about that, because if this is the precedent that is set, then they'll just take every other aspect they don't like. You know, that Third Amendment, quartering soldiers. Watch out.
They're going to all be in your house.
You have some Navy fellas at your house here pretty soon, Jesse.
You have a very big grocery bill. You have a very big grocery bill. But Brian, a lot of the strategy from the Trump administration with these executive orders is to push these issues like birthright citizenship to the Supreme Court and to actually get some clarification on things like the 14th Amendment, for example. And as the president said today during his press briefing, he really feels like they can now move forward with his agenda that's been so impeded by these nationwide injunctions for the first 5 months of his second term.
And don't you think, Katie, they do have to go and start doing something, pass legislation?
Yeah.
Besides the president, when
Congress
they get done with the
should
big,
get
beautiful
involved,
bill,
too.
they should really actually do something. I thought it was interesting that out of the 64 injunctions that he's got in the first term, now 45 in the next, 92% were Democratic-appointed judges. So we're just cutting on ideological lines. Here's the thing. They could have done something almost as effective and said, can you stop picking the jurisdictions to bring the cases in and maybe make it a little bit more interesting? So if it's a Democratic judge, you bring your case to a city that will be sympathetic to your cause, and you stop the president in his tracks. It's going to be interesting because they're going to sign some more executive orders. They're going to give it to a district judge. That district judge, even though he hates Trump, will have to say, wait a second, the Supreme Court made a ruling, or is he going to say, I'm stopping it right here. I'll let this whole thing play out. So maybe it's still going to be delayed. Lastly, Amy Coney Barrett, who was called out by the president a short time ago by saying basically I picked the wrong person. She went after, as you mentioned, Jesse, went after Ketanji Brown. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. And she goes on to say when judges issue injunctions to block policies like those the Trump administration is trying to implement, they can't apply the injunction to more than the parties involved. But Barrett said the type of order often called nationwide injunction is judicial overreach. Yeah. Just pointing out the problem with her reasoning. So we'll see where this goes. I cannot wait for birthright citizenship September to come front and center. Because if you argue this out, from almost every level, it's being abused. Democrats should also not want to see it be abused.
Well, the fact,
guys, stick around. We're going to jump back into the clip. It only gets better from here. You're going to want to hear the next part. But here's the truth the media won't admit. Biden's legacy is completely unraveling, and it's his own picks on the bench who are helping expose the cracks. Amy Coney Barrett didn't just write a legal opinion. She delivered a takedown of Justice Jackson's sloppy activism. This is what happens when you nominate someone based on identity politics instead of merit. And don't forget, this ruling doesn't just empower Trump. It protects you guys, your values, your kids, your rights as a parent. This is what the left fears most. Americans reclaiming their authority. Let me know what you think down in the comments, guys. And if you want to support bold conservative commentary without censorship, consider becoming a channel member. Let's keep this movement strong.
That the majority opinion had that line in there from Amy Coney Barrett, then they all didn't take it out. It says a lot about the way they're feeling about their fellow justice. But Jessica, politically, where do Democrats go from here? I mean, a lot of their strategy was to use the court system to get these injunctions, and now that tool has been taken away from them.
Well, it hasn't been taken away from them because we're already back in court, and federal court in Maryland, and the plaintiffs there had their suit ready to go. They knew exactly what was going to happen, and actually the majority opinion cleared the way for people to do this as class action. It won't have the same name, it won't be nationwide injunction, but it'll have the same ramifications. So Democrats, the party of lawyers, ready to go, suited up, sent up the bat signal. At best, this is a compromise position. So we should be clear that the executive order, the protection for specific plaintiffs, stays in place. So it's not like they're waking up tomorrow and they're going to get kicked out of the country. And again, then we have this class action approach. To the idea that it is Democrats that only use that, it's blatantly false. The reason that we don't have student debt forgiveness from President Biden is because the Republicans went and got a nationwide injunction. People like AG Ken Paxton in Texas, there's a judge in East Texas that he likes a lot that puts out injunctions for the entire nation, super right-wing guy. So let's not make this about partisan politics.
So it's good they clarified that it shouldn't be used for either party.
Well, what's good, I guess, is that they clarified that if you want to go and do this to protect people and give them their constitutional rights, and the 14th Amendment is pretty clear, that you do it as a class action suit, not an injunction in this way. But, you know, Trump, he takes a victory lap on absolutely everything that he does. It was to be expected. He loves the podium, spent an hour up there. But if you look at the example that's already being set, like I said, in Maryland, you're going to see this happening all over the country for every issue that he listed off, every 64 of them. I don't know about, you know, the love violence.
It would be just that case.
But
For
they
example,
can do
just
it.
the Maryland case, it won't be a precedent for the whole country.
Right, but the class, the way that I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm very literate, is that that you don't have to have signatories. It can be an entire class of people. Obviously, it doesn't have to be everyone's name on it. So if they get a protection for a certain group of people, then that would be able to be, quote unquote, universal. So you will end up with universal injunctions. It will just go through the class action route.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch these big issues get to the Supreme Court, especially birthright citizenship in October. So we'll be.
All right, let's talk about what we just witnessed there, guys. This is a historic moment. The Supreme Court just crushed the left's #1 tactic, using unelected, unaccountable judges to block the will of the people. These nationwide injunctions were never about justice. They were about power. They were about stripping President Trump of the ability to lead and shoving a radical agenda down our throats from the bench. But today, guys, that ends. And what we saw in the 5 was the left's total meltdown in real time. Panic, rage, gaslighting. Why? Because the game has changed. Their legal stronghold is collapsing, and the America First agenda is on the move again. Trump is right. Birthright citizenship, sanctuary cities, parental rights, education, everything that they've tried to block is coming back to the forefront. Guys, this isn't just a political win. This is a spiritual win, because we're reclaiming truth, order, and yes, God-given rights. And what about Amy Coney Barrett? She didn't just win the argument. She exposed the bankruptcy of the left's legal ideology. When your dissent isn't based on law but on feelings, you're not a judge. You're an activist. And this ruling drew a line in the sand, guys. Parents, you finally have the power to say, not in my home, not with my kids. Patriots, you finally have the chance to watch your vote and your voice become action again. And for every American who has watched this country veer into madness, this ruling is your wake-up call. It's not too late to take it back. So where do we go from here, guys? We double down. We don't coast. We keep the pressure on in the courts, at the ballot box, in our churches, and yes, right here in this online fight for truth, guys. If you haven't already, hit like, subscribe for more commentary that cuts through the noise, guys. And if you're with us in this fight for truth, then we'll see you in the next one.